Hey, my name is Andrew Davis, and you are watching Conversations in Pop Culture, brought to you by my sponsor, Mixum. Mixum printing is the smarter way to print, as printing your creative projects can be confusing and stressful, but Mixum is here to make it easy. From their instant quote calculator that lets you get as many quotes as you want for free to their 24-hour customer service, Mixum is here to make your printing experience run smoothly from start to finish. And you can choose from a range of premium printing options and materials. And the company has also printed so many people's Kickstarters and their campaigns and their comics actually who have been on this show. And it's amazing. And everybody who uses Mixum loves Mixum, and they are right now killing it. And they can basically print anywhere you want to go, the United States, Canada, Australia, and the UK. And they can reach your audience anywhere around the world. So if you're ready to print smarter, not harder, head over to mixum.com. And right now they're actually running an awesome promotion where listeners of this show can drop my name, Andrew Davis, in the message tab to get 5% off your first order. That's mixam.com. Type my name, Andrew Davis, in the message tab of your current order to receive a 5% discount off of that order. And every percentage point counts, especially when you're barely making your goal in Kickstarter or you're $200 above your goal, because it matters right now. So obviously, having said all that, I have with me returning guest Ed Davis. So welcome back to the show, man.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, I am excited because you got a lot of stuff going on. And I think the last time you were on was on March 30th of this year. And you were in the middle of funding the Immortal Era #4. And so I think that's the best place to start. For those who don't know, what is the Immortal Era? Obviously, we're on the 5th issue now, and that's what's going on. You're funded for the 5th issue, I think either earlier today or yesterday. But for those who are brand new and hearing about it for the first time, what is the Immortal Era?
Immortal Era is a story. It's going to be a long-form story, 30 issues long, and it takes place 200 years in the future in a post-apocalyptic world where nobody can die. It centers on a group of outcasts who live underground in an abandoned subway system. This is where the unwanted people of the world are forced to live, those considered non-legal citizens. So it centers on a group of 4 who are on a mission to find relics from the past, search out exactly why people stop dying, and to save humanity by killing them.
And so obviously there's a lot of stuff going on. I'm going to give a little bit more context. Obviously, there is a doctor who sort of wound up helping to create this and kill death itself, and also, I guess, propagated and helped to establish, I guess, this new world where there is a division of class and the have-nots and the haves, and obviously the division of upper and lower class society. And now he wanted to die, and then he's now with this group, and their mission is to go and piece together parts of death and restore death. And then death is, I guess, a mystical creature or entity that was scattered all over, and, well, you need resources to find death, for lack of a better word. I know it sounds morbid, everybody. I know it sounds completely morbid, but believe me when I say it, it's really not in this comic. So what prompted this? And we're obviously going to get into a little bit of issue 5 and where that's going and a little bit more context. But it's very interesting because you've taken the concept of a post-apocalyptic world, sort of flipped it upside its head, taken the issue of life and death as well and threw it in there, and then shook up the bottle. And now it's kind of like, nobody can die, and that should be a good thing, but it's really quite bad in that way.
Yeah, they realize right away that immortality is not a great thing because you can't count on the population to control themselves. So it immediately becomes overpopulated, natural resources dwindle, and you kind of get glimpses of the people just tearing down their cities, burning them down. So people just get completely out of control, and what ends up happening is society as we know it just crumbles. And like you said, we end up with the haves and the have-nots. Very few citizens would be considered legal. They have to be selected in a special lottery. And anyone who's not legal, well, the people who are caught pregnant, there's harsh consequences. So they have to dispose of their babies in any way that they can. So we see some ways that they do. And then those who do manage to live through that, they're living underground. And it's just kind of a big free for all society in the underground where, you know, everybody's hunting for whatever scraps they can get. And if you have something, then immediately everybody else is going to want to take that from you.
Yeah, and also this goes into a whole thing where there's morals in play. There's also survival. There's also different alliances in the underground, and there's different people who are analyzing things differently. And obviously, we get sort of the four people. I think it's Father, Kimberly, Ari, and Miguel and Dr. Mann. I mean, I guess it's five.
Yeah.
And
Five.
they have a different set of morals than other people. And, you know, sometimes you got to do to protect what is known as Hope Village, and even that. And so it's very interesting because those 4 or 5 don't want to kill and they don't want conflict, but they also are being forced into it from groups that are trying to hurt them and kill them and take what they have, because what Hope Village has is a very protective group. And so it's very interesting when you get into that and get into the consequences and even the psychological aspects of it, because now you have different factions forming and decisions, and real adult decisions have to be made to ensure that your group is okay versus from a group that obviously wants to steal from you. And so what was that like, really building that up? Because it is a very deep philosophical question.
Yeah, I mean, with that, it's, you know, they have, for some people, they just want the bodies that are existing there. They're cannibals. They'll take what they can get. And then other people know that this village has, you know, resources that no one else has seen. Even the surface, they would be the kind of thing that only the rich would get, because Dr. Mann, as we see in the 3rd issue, he comes from wealth. And he's also one of the big inventors of that world. So he brings with him all that knowledge. Not the wealth, but wealth down there would be useless. They would burn paper money to keep fires going in the village. But the resources he brings makes them in constant peril. There's always someone trying to take what they have, and they have to think, okay, I want to scare this guy off. And most of the time they can wave a gun at him and off they scamper. But when they don't want to take them out. They don't want to have to, you know, take out in this world, not kill them, because that's an impossibility, but destroy their cognitive function. That becomes the big threat that they throw out at each other. It's like, I'll destroy your cognitive function, because death is impossible. But if you take out their brain, they're not going to be of much use anymore. They'll end up cannibal food.
Yeah, and also, I think when we say death, I mean, you can cut somebody's head off and their head is still alive. And the only reason how you could essentially eliminate somebody is by eating them. And pretty much, people can die, but they can't die in the same way that they can in the world, where a bullet going through you isn't going to kill you. It's the idea that legitimately you have to be grinded and then consumed into something else. And even still, you know, you might, some part of you isn't decomposed, you know, if somebody eats your arm or eats your head, your body might still be active to some degree. And it's a whole morbid thought. So obviously it's a very interesting world. And then going even further into this, just to catch everybody up, because I think we're going to dive into issue 5, I promise. They're on a mission in issue 4, and Ari winds up having to go up against Dr. Nix. And obviously Dr. Mann and Dr. Nix have some stuff going on. And I'm avoiding certain things purposely because I don't want it to make no sense. So you have to buy all 5 issues. And so that sort of sets the pretense for issue 5. So what took place in issue 4, without giving too much away, that sort of sets up what's going on in issue 5?
In issue 4, Ari sent up to the surface. In issue 1, we see Miguel chop off the arm of Dr. Nix. And the arm is where they hold the chips, the basic chips that prove that they're citizens. So Miguel now has Dr. Nix's chip, and he puts it into Ari's arm, and she has to go up because he wasn't expecting any kind of a confrontation. He was expecting to go get in, get out, get the book that he was looking for and leave. And when the confrontation happened, having to deal with Dr. Nix damaged the chips that he was trying to get. So now Ari's forced to go back up. And the thing about Ari is she's young and she's brazen, and she definitely thinks
She's young, dumb,
the
and
best warrior that exists.
the
So
saying
she's,
is
you know,
young,
she's
dumb.
very much either. Oh, sorry about that. Go ahead.
And I was going to just say that the best way to describe Ari is that she's young, dumb, and obviously she's not broke because wealth isn't a big thing in the underworld. But it's this idea that she doesn't have the experience, and then she sort of gets into a fight with Dr. Nix and barely survives the fight. And well, you know, when that happens, the police come, and that sort of sets what's going on a little bit with issue 5, because without ruining too much, you know, Ari winds up getting in police custody. Up on the surface, when you're not a legal citizen, things get complicated. And so what was that like? Because that's the first time we're really experiencing what happens, because it's implied what happens to people who are not legal citizens. But this is the first time we're actually seeing it in the comic. And I think it's a very important moment in this comic, because it's like, oh, okay, this is really what happens, and this is what they're dealing with when there's criminality. And because Ari's not the first person to be up on the surface, who's not supposed to be up on the surface.
Yeah. I mean, you see, this is how they arrest. It's, you know, they don't really have weapons they need to deploy, because they just go for capture, because in this world, a body that's captured can be used for something. And where they take the prisoners, that's something that really we won't see till probably, I think issue 9 was where we'll actually see what a prison in this world would look like. And it's definitely not the kind of prison that we see in this society. It's something completely different. And they call it the flat fields. That's one of their threats they always throw is, I'm going to send you to the flat fields. What are they? That's something, like I said, that's one of my big reveals in issue 9, is to see exactly what does this surface prison look like, where they take all the people they capture. Because in issue 3, we
even talk about this.
Okay.
So to even talk about this, because obviously we are in a very futuristic world. And so a prison in this world is not going to be the same as you stated. And obviously when you have the idea that you can't kill and you want to use something, you know, for instance, you know, sometimes in prisons, the goal is to have labor. For lack of a better word, you know, prison industries in the United States is a big industry, and it's beyond fascinating. And some of the items in your very house and in my house are probably made in prison industry, because it's cheap labor. And when you have a body that could be used for, you know, parts, or it could be used for population, or it could be used for food, you're going to treat that very differently. So where does that even idea come from for you to develop something like this? Because obviously you sort of name dropped a little bit. I don't want to force, but to even go further, because a lot of this stuff, like their robots are very much police, and they're designed not to kill, they're designed to capture. And that's a whole different mentality than what we have right now in our society, where we have both. But obviously when you take death off the table, there's a whole bunch of creativity that has to fill up voids. So what was that like, and what's that creation process for you? Because it's so interesting, this world, and this world is very rich in that way, in the way you developed it.
Yeah, for me, I just had to think, what would they want to do, and how could they serve a function? And yeah, the way basically, I don't want to spoil anything, because we were talking second arc of the book spoilers, but yeah, what ends up happening in the prisons is, yes, they are used for some sort of a service, those prisoners that are captured. Some are used in one way, some are used in another way, but the choice is ripped away from them immediately when they're brought to those prisons. And we see kind of the how terrible the nature of that world is when we see how they treat those people they capture.
And obviously, you know, I think everybody can have 4 or 5 ideas of what's going on, because now that death is off the table, this is, typically, capital punishment, not to get too political, but it is like the ultimate form of punishment. And
Yeah.
that's taking something off the table. And not to get into a big political debate before anybody attacks me, but it's so interesting where this is going and what this looks like and the creativity and how you have to go and almost invent something and, show the real, because it shows a real division of what happens. And I'm sure that it's not just the underground people that are in this prison either. There's a variety of other things because there's still issues with crime and a variety of other things that wind up happening. So obviously, it's going to get very, very
it's
interesting.
definitely divided up for more people.
And so it's super.
And it takes, I mean, it takes lots of dark turns for sure. But the prison, I think that one will be a shocking moment for readers because you have your thoughts in your mind. And I remember when I first told my original artist on the series about my idea for what they were doing to some of the prisoners, he goes, "Ooh, that's too dark for me." So I said, "Okay, you're gonna have to know this world's dark. So we're not gonna get graphic, but it's gonna be pretty twisted to see."
It's not going to be a bitch planet type prison. So bitch planet is the idea that it's almost like an arena.
I mean, I'm sure it's been seen before, but I'm hoping to make it different enough to not just be like, oh, I knew exactly what was going to happen. That's my goal in the whole series, is never to let people think I knew exactly what was going to happen right here, right here.
So for those who don't know, Bitch Planet is a comic, and it's very much a battle royale, free for all type prison thing where you have to fight to survive. This is not like that because when you take death off the table, that doesn't make any sense. So, obviously it's going to be a lot more psychological, but I'm not going to press you too much on this because obviously this sort of opens up where Ari is going, what's going to happen, obviously, and then this sort of forces what is Miguel going to do? What is the overall plan now with this book? Because, well, you got to save your comrade and your, I guess, partner. And what role is Miguel going to do in this? What allies are on the surface? What enemies are on the surface as well? And then on top of that, once this happens, we got to talk about Kimberly because Kimberly is in Hope Village and she is very much not interested in necessarily defending Hope Village. She is more wanting to be a civilian. She's more of, I think, sort of on the side and in the background, maybe more in the technology space, but not in the defending space. And she's having to make a choice because of what's happened. And obviously, for those who don't know, and I'm going to spoil a little bit, her choice is to go up on the surface for the first time. And obviously have to make a big pivotal moment to now get involved in doing something and now taking a more active role. And what was this like? Because at this point, she hasn't taken one in the comic at the moment, and this is her first time. And developing that character is super interesting in that right.
Yeah, she's a tricky character, and she's going to have a huge arc that basically in issue 6 we're going to see her big moment that will lead her down a pathway that's much different than just being kind of the pampered princess of the underground. So the next issue will bring her up to the surface with Miguel and Ari on their quest to find, as you were saying, the body parts of death that are scattered around. So now she becomes directly involved in this mission, even though she brings no expertise in battle or anything like that. She's someone who's, always dreaming of the surface and is fully immersed in what's going on up there. So she's a good resource to have to know what's, where to go and what places to avoid, because she spends her life obsessed with with everything outside of the underground. And her greatest wish is to get to the surface, but she's not going to be helpful as a warrior or anything like that. So with her biggest thing is going to be her knowledge that she can bring when she goes up there, because they need to have a well-rounded team, because what they're going to face are huge threats, bigger than they've faced in any point in time in the book.
And then even to add to this, and I don't want to touch too much on that because we're going to ruin things, and that's all we're trying to do.
Yeah.
Trying to get your Kickstarter twice as funded. And so obviously, though, one of the things, and I think it's super important to actually talk about it right now, is that you have 30, possibly even more issues. So to introduce her and have her have a pivotal moment starting in issue 5 and 6, for a series that's 12 issues, it's not as, groundbreaking. But when we're now getting into a series that has 30 issues or 40 or 50 issues or even 25 issues, it is a bigger deal because now we have a lot more runway.
Yeah.
And I think that's why she's getting introduced now. And I want to make that clear to everybody who's listening and watching, is that there is a reason why, because you don't need to introduce every character immediately, especially when you have such a long runway. And so she's going to play a very pivotal role, as you were describing. And I think that's super important that people understand that there is a lot more room for her, and there's going to be at least another 24 issues of that. We get to see what she brings to the table and how she's not just this fashionista character who likes fashion and doesn't want to enter the fight. Now she's becoming very much like a spy and intel. And it's very important because that's just as important as being able to physically deal with somebody. And so it's very cool to see where she's going to be going with this and why her area of expertise, and also the fact that, well, she has good people skill up above, and that's super important with what they're going to be facing with death, along with dealing with that entire prison situation and a variety of other things that are about to happen and unveil itself. And really, issue 5 is cocking the hammer to the gun.
Yeah, issue 5 is, I mean, it takes a different, it's one of the things that's the problem gets resolved rather quickly, but it brings a bigger problem to the table. And the prison system, we really won't see the inside of that until later in the series, but we're going to start seeing Kimberly's character. It'll take a while, but we'll start seeing the growth in her character. And then eventually we'll start seeing her people skills at work. So I'm writing right now, currently really fleshing out the second arc. And in that one, we see her strengths. Her strength isn't, pull out a sword or a gun. She's handed a gun and doesn't know what to do with it. She looks at it like, all right, what the heck is this thing in my hand? But, that's never going to be her strength. She's not the one who's going to win with brute force. So we start to see her develop. And like you said, there's a lot of issues to go. It's a 30-issue series, and then there's sideways stories that I want to tell. I figure there's a whole world that we can develop that happened from the year 2000 to the year 2200. What went down in that world? We just get glimpses of it in this one with little flashbacks of things that they're watching that were broadcast from that time. So in the end, it'll be the 30-issue big story, but there's also some sideways ones I'd like to tell. There's a character in issue 1, the reporter, Stephen George. I love that character and want to spend more time with him. So I want to see, okay, we see him being arrested at the end of issue 1. Where does he go from there? And I know other readers have asked, like, okay, I want to see more about that character. So I'm writing a whole arc of just his story of what happens to him, and his story can kind of show the changes that occur in the world as he's still alive.
And then even going further, because the third part of issue 5 that we sort of touch upon is that, well, now that Ari, Miguel, and Kimberly are gone from Hope Village, and Dr. Mann really can only do a little bit of defending, a father who's founded Hope Village is sort of left to defend Hope Village relatively by himself. And obviously there's a group of scavengers, and they look like the ones from, I think, issue 1 or the beginning of issue 2. And, well, they might now want to be back. And now there's that issue as well, where there's a main quest, and then there's also the idea of how do you deal and defend what your property is and what your items are and what your village is, or do you have to abandon it? And then do you have to go up to the surface, or how do you even deal with that? Or what technology or what solutions do you use when you're being attacked at a weak point and you don't have as much defense as you had before. And so obviously that's a whole nother issue too, because now we're really being fragmented in 3 stories. And
Yeah.
obviously they are all relevant to each other, but they're also all individual. And what was that like to write that? Because that's a big problem too, where people want resources. So obviously, and these people may or may not be somewhat jacked up a little bit more now and have some more firepower to try to take this village as well. And so there's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah. I mean, this issue kind of sets up the big moments for issue 6. So yeah, there's the gang leader that's coming into the village, and then we see the return of this character from issue 1 who had attacked Ari earlier. So we get to see the return of these characters, but for the first time, they're not functioning as a full family. They're fragmented. So telling both stories, I definitely enjoyed being able to do that, because for the first time we're seeing each group in their own individual ways, and we're seeing Father as, you know, the strength of the village, but he used to have Kimberly, and he used to have Ari, and he used to have Miguel, who could, you know, they could take down any kind of weak warriors that would walk in. But now he's got, you know, they're lightly trained, but none of the people that are left to protect the village have as much training in the art of war as Miguel and Ari have. So you're pretty much leaving the village to be protected by one person, and we see what a mess that becomes, especially in issue 6 when, you know, they're under full attack and he doesn't have any real warriors among him.
And so obviously, as I stated, issue 5 sort of ends, I think, the first arc, and then it sets up the second arc, and it sets up a variety of problems that are about to hit. And so obviously, if you read issue 1 and then you read issue 2 and 3 and 4, issue 5 starts wrapping up, I think, sort of the prequel, well, what I like to view just sort of the honeymoon period. And now we're about to get, you know, where things hit the fan. And so it's going to be very interesting with what's going on. And I don't want to ruin too much about it, because I already ruined enough.
6 will close out this arc, and then pretty much we'll start seeing all of the parts of this world, because we've been isolated in our settings. We've seen the underground Hope Village, we've seen the city on the surface, but there's a lot more to the world that we haven't seen. So once issue 6 ends, that's when we kind of open up the full world, and we'll start seeing all kinds of different parts of the world. And
you start seeing how the world functions. You start seeing how government functions. And I hate to go dark and brooding, but I think it's logical. Obviously, when you have, you know, right now we have 2 billion people in the world right now. Mm-hmm. If all of a sudden you have 14 billion people, the world is going to work a lot differently, and then the lifespan is infinity. If you don't do anything stupid in your world, then you know, it becomes very different, where things have to run differently, because now everybody's living, you know, forever essentially. And then also you have people who say, hey, well, you know, I'm rich and I'm living forever. I don't want death to come back. And then there's that being in play too. And so it's kind of a crazy entity with all that and all that stuff. So obviously there's a lot of stuff going on, and we're going to really start seeing how all this stuff starts functioning probably issue 7, 8, 9, and 10. And then it creates very much what I like to call a plug and play world. And I know this isn't plug and play, but at some point we could take this world and we could go 100 years in the past and see how all this was developed, and see how it has evolved, or we go 300 years in the future. Maybe not 300 years in the future, because if they solve the problem, you know, we could see how 300 years later humanity has dealt with living forever for 200 years. But the road up to this, it can be very much plug and play. So it's getting very, very interesting. But before I start ruining everything and start pressing and start throwing ideas, and you know, your body language is going to give it away, I have a pretty good idea where the prison's going. But I'll do it off air. So you guys are going to actually have to read the book. You're going to have to back it on Kickstarter. There's a bunch of rewards. So there are a digital copy of issue 5, and then there's also a bunch of digital catch-ups, and so that exists. And then there's a physical copy of issue 5, and then there's also, I think, a physical copy of Immortal 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I'm not too sure. We spoke about it the last time, but it's been a while. Do you still have original copies of those books from the first printing, or have you reprinted and modified the covers a little bit, or is it a mixture of both? Because it gets tricky when you're reprinting things and collecting.
Yeah, it's a mixture of both, and I made sure I put it in the story. So if you're buying 1, 2, and 3 are all on second print now. 4 is, there's still first prints of those ones available, and then 5, of course, is just going to be printed, so there will be plenty of first prints. So there are a handful of CGC copies that are first prints of issue, not one. I went to the con in Tampa and sold my last remaining first print issue 1s, and they were all just CGC ones. I was completely out of loose copies of issue 1, besides my table copy, which if anyone wants that thing, it's a wreck. It's been taped down on tables and it has rips all over it, but it's the one that you can flip through if you're at a con. But as far as first prints of 1, those are gone. I have one last issue 2 first print that I happened to find someone put it on eBay. I'm like, all right, I'll buy some first prints of issue 2 since I'm out. So I bought them back from somebody there, and one of those is left. I'll probably end up mailing that one to CGC and get it graded. And then 3, that happened during COVID. So 3 had a super low print count. I only did 100 copies of it, just enough to fulfill the Kickstarter, and didn't really need surplus because there was nothing really going on. So the first prints of issue 3 blew out really quick. And then 4, there's still I think I did about 300 for that. So there's at least 100 left. So there may reach a point in the Kickstarter, if I see too many backers, then I'll say, okay, now you're going to get issue 4 second print. I had to do that on the last campaign and say, okay, the first print of issue 1 is gone. So now that particular reward I closed out, and then opened up another one that said first issue 1 second print.
And so obviously, and the reason why I bring this up is because I am in the collector space, and obviously DC goes through a bunch of print runs, and people view different value and different things. Sometimes second print holds obviously more than a 7th print, but if you have an Ultimate Fallout 4 and it's a second print, and you have a first print, the first print is 10 times what the second print is.
Yeah.
But obviously, it gets tricky when things go on. And then also, sometimes different people, what they do is that they have different covers, and they have different cover artists do different print runs for the reason because they want to protect the people who back that first Kickstarter, and they don't want to go and punish, people who took a risk on it and said, hey, I'm collecting it, and also, I just wanted a first copy, and you're printing and you're not print copying a bunch of this stuff. And so I want to just highlight that because I think it's very important. And then also you do some cool stuff too, and where you do obviously issue 5 in a poster. And so that's an option. It's for a little bit more money. And then you do Virgin sketch covers and short runs. And I think the Virgin is 25 copies.
Yeah.
And then the short run is similar, right?
It's 20. They're both 25.
And so what is the difference between a short print run and the Virgin and that stuff? For those who don't know.
The Virgin one I do is pure. It's not colored. There's no lettering on it. So it's more like what the artist would submit to me when he gives me the work. So they look more like the original pages do. So these ones are
something like this, right?
These are the regular short print ones. And issue 4 is actually, the last copies I had of that sold out already. So 4 will be no longer available. There's still a handful of CGC ones. And then the 5, that one, it's the lettered copy will get inserted in there as soon as the letter is done. So with the issue 5 short print, that one is also limited to 25 copies. I try to do that, but my last runs have sold out almost completely on the Kickstarter. So I'm probably going to double those to 50 for future campaigns. So this will be the last one where it's 25 and 25.
And so obviously that is more of a collector's product. And for people who want those things that are way more out there collector wise, and it's also more of saying, hey, you know, this is what Kickstarter is for, is to deliver that type of material.
Mm-hmm.
And so obviously I think I'm going to just show a bunch of stuff here. And as soon as I pull it up, and I might be doing this slightly out of order, so obviously that's not the thing I wanted to show. Wow, I'm really bad at this today. So obviously this is sort of where the whole set for the most part. So I think that
that's the 1 through 5 set.
And so that's the 1 through 5 set. And then this is also the black and white, you know.
Yeah, that's the Virgin sketch ones.
And so that's something that's out there. And then this is also what it looks like CGC'd for the most part. And as you can see, there's some 9.6s, and most of them are 9.8s. I don't know. Have you pulled a 9.9 yet?
I still haven't. I'm still waiting for that. I did a batch. My last batch was 30 books. So it was the biggest batch I had sent in yet. And every book got a 9.8, which don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining because I've had them come back at 9.0 and 9.2. So to get an entire run at 9.8 was beautiful, but it's like, oh, I'm still dying to hit that 9.9.
9.9s are hard to hit. It's very difficult. I have not pulled a 9.9 at all, and very few people pull 9.9s. And it's a beast. And what we're talking about, for those who don't know, CGC basically goes from NA all the way up, green label NA incomplete, to perfect 10s. To get a perfect 10, the book has to be perfect. And what that means is that if CGC issues a 10, that means that there can't be a book that is more perfect than that book. If you issue a 9.9, it's almost nearly perfect, but there's still room for it to be more perfect, and they don't give out 10s all that often. And then if they issue out a 9.8, 9.8s can be very discretionary. And what can be about a 9.8, and it happens all the time, is if an entire comic has a misprint, that could become a 9.8. And the reason why it becomes a 9.8 is because every book has a misprint. So legitimately, if every book from a publisher, they purposely put a Sharpie on it, that could be technically a 9.8. Or if there's always a spine fracture on every single book in the same location, or there's a spine tick issue, it could be a 9.8. If every single book or 95% of the book has an issue. So obviously pulling a 9.8, you know, you have a little bit of a spine issue, and it could be fine. Also, CGC is very, you know, I've had books that should have been 9.4s and they gave me a 9.8, but they also, when you put money into a book, and if you put $400 into a book, CGC might lean a little more favorable. And they won't say it, but they might, because they understand that if you just put, you know, $300 into a book or $400 into a book, and it's between a 9.4 and a 9.6 or a 9.6 and a 9.8, they might lean a certain way because they understand that there's real money in something. So it's super interesting. But obviously, the reason why CGC exists, and I'm sure you know this, and why you're doing it, is that God forbid this thing gets optioned or it takes off or something like that. Well, if you have, you know, issue 5 and Kimberly becomes everybody's favorite character on Netflix, well, and her big moment's issue 5, there you go. So obviously, what is that like for you to offer that? Because it is very cool, and it's more of a new thing at this point in Kickstarter, is the CGC route, and it's in my wheelhouse.
For me, I've been a collector forever, so I always wanted to do something that would be more catered to the collectors. That's why when I do the short print covers, I do 25 and then I retire them. I promise my people that anyone that would back me and spend the extra money to get one of the limited ones, I tell them I'm not just going to say, okay, now it's second print of that cover. The main cover, that one can get done a million times. I don't care. But the short print cover has to be sacred for the collectors. So I do it that way. And I actually never knew I could even get an indie book CGC graded. I was just at San Diego
it's a new
Comic-Con,
thing.
and they
It's
told
it's
me
a
that,
new
yeah,
thing.
we'll grade anything.
Yeah,
So I didn't
it's
know you
very
could.
much CGC. They were never against indie books, but I
Mhm.
don't think that they imagined where it was going.
Yeah.
And I think they're happy as long as it fits into their holder. That's not the issue. But
Mhm.
I would imagine, and I need data on it, so I don't need to be quoted. But obviously, I've been in this space, and I'm obviously building out the entire class on this. Going
Yeah.
slowly, I'll add that.
Mhm.
But it's the idea that I think that they've got an influx of indie books, and I'm
Yeah.
actually curious on this before we get back to some rewards. Where do because I think it's newer. I think it's in the last 2 3 years. I don't
Mhm.
remember Kickstarter 2017 2016 that CGC was even offered
Yeah.
privately or publicly. I have friends when I back their project, they'll say, "Hey, do you want me to CGC it for you?" And I just don't want to wait forever. I don't want to spend the extra money
Yeah.
because it's easier for me to sell a raw book than it is to
Mhm.
sell CGC book a lot of times.
Yeah.
It's easier on shipping, and from a business
Yeah.
standpoint, it's just less capital in.
Yeah.
But where do you think, and why do you think that change happened? Because, and you're the first person I'm actually asking, because as
Mhm.
somebody in this space, and I'm coming from the angle where that we as serious comic book investors and alternative investors, we don't really know where Kickstarter is going and where indie books are going
Yeah.
as far as investments, and it's very much a coin toss. So I'm curious, as somebody who's been doing this for a while, where did that change start, and why do you think that change happened? Because I'm curious personally, and I'm sure a lot of other people are as well.
I think for me, it happened when I even know that you could do it, but it also comes down to you're at a con, you're amongst the sea of indie creators. You have to have something on your table that sets it apart. And a CGC book, just like you said, it attracts a certain level of collector. And I think the collectors believe if you're willing to take the time and effort to get your stuff graded, then that you have enough belief in your own material that they're going to take a risk on it, because I'd say it's becoming more common, but a lot of indie creators still don't get their stuff graded, or they might get one graded for themselves, not mass amounts of it for consumption. So
So,
even
so
my
uh,
first
yeah.
campaigns didn't have CGC. It wasn't until my third one that I started offering that.
So did you also think that it's psychological? Because when I get some CGC, I mean, I'm basically making a statement
Mm-hmm.
where I'm saying, hey, I think and I'm willing to put $30 into this, and
Mm-hmm.
that this is a $30 book, and I'm willing to match its value to
Yeah.
protect it, and I'm also making a statement, and also that there's a common fallacy, and we might be hurting ourselves slightly here, but it's also the idea that if something it costs $90, there's a perceived value with it
Mm-hmm.
automatically. If something costs $60 versus it raw for 30, there's a
Yeah.
perceived value. Not to mention that I think since you're the creator and publisher, I think CGC essentially has come around to the idea that you can sign it and it's sent in as it's almost witnessed, if I'm not
Mm-hmm.
mistaken, correct?
Yeah.
So I can't do that unless I have some connection to the book.
Yeah.
If I'm a co-creator of a company, I can do that. But
Mm-hmm.
right now, I can't go and do it unless you have an arrangement with CGC. I think that's
Yeah.
also the other thing too, where it's the perceived value of signatures as well.
Yeah.
And now it's that. So do you think that's also a part of it, where that's affecting it as
Mm-hmm.
well?
I think people really like getting the signature series. I mean, that kind of definitely increases the value in people's minds, because they want it signed, but the fact that it's signed and it's certified. And I had to go to CGC's booth when they were at a Comic-Con, and they had to witness my signature and put it in their system. So now I can send my own stuff in. And if you wanted to do a signing with me, there's a form that I could fill out for you, and all of the ones you got signed would be certified as well. So I can have events with my signature that people could send in, and it would work. But it's one of those things that I think they definitely did a lot for the small creator like myself, to make it to where I don't have to have a witness in the room to be able to sign my own books. And it does appeal more to have that yellow label with the certified signature, some people will automatically flock to that a lot more.
And also, do you think it's just another product at a table at this point?
Yeah.
Um, because at this point you need something flashy, you know.
You need something to grab their eyes.
That's the whole thing with variants, and obviously I was going to be entering that space, but something came up in my life, an emergency came up, and economics didn't play out. But I was smart enough to know that, well, you need something flashy to grab somebody, whether that's a CGC book or a graded, you know, variant, or even, you know, something that's not normal or an art style that is very different. And I think it's very competitive. And even on the internet, you need something flashy at this point.
Yeah.
Or you need a lot of money. One or the other works usually.
Yeah.
So obviously, I think that's something very cool. And obviously, it's my space that I'm in. And I have a lot of stuff on eBay right now, a lot of collectible stuff, and comics are very much a fascinating asset. They're a lot slower than crypto, I can tell you that. Today was a rough crypto day. 10 o'clock and 12 o'clock were 2 different days today in crypto. If you had your Solana at 10 a.m. this morning, you were not feeling too good. At 12 or 1 p.m., you were feeling a hell of a lot better. And I was watching, and it went down like 30%, and then it swung back up.
Wow.
I don't own any of it. My Ethereum isn't doing too hot. I wanted to actually buy it, and it's very difficult to buy Solana today. So that's all I'm going to say on that point. But obviously, there's a bunch of other stuff too that you have as rewards. So you have, you know, T-shirts. You know, you have a dad hat, which is kind of funny. I like how you labeled it a dad hat. It's not a hat, guys. It's a dad hat. That's how we're rolling.
Hey, that's what people are calling them. So I guess I'm wearing the right hat. I'm like, I guess I've morphed into that.
And then also you have some more original art that you're offering and a few pages. I think you're also offering, you know, obviously bundles that are a little bit cheaper with some of this stuff as well. And so what is offering all that stuff and even offering art? And that's because people like original art in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think with that, it's something I've offered at every campaign, but it hasn't really had much movement. And in the last few, I'm getting more and more people that want the original art. So I put up the original cover for the first time. I put a cover up as it's something that they can purchase. And the price is high because I hate to get rid of it. So I'll, you know, if someone's not going to pay the higher price, then I'll keep it for myself because that would make me happier inside. But when it comes down to this is a business. I have to try to sell things. So it's not about keeping me happy inside. It's about letting other people get that. If they really want to cover, give them that chance.
It's the first one that you release. So obviously I'm very much in this business, and I'm the first person to say it, where there are books that were very sad to go, but then once you sell it and you list it, the next one becomes easier, and the next one becomes easier. And, you know, if it also gets stolen, it becomes easier to let it go as well, because it just eases that pain that sometimes happens. And things happen in life. And so I am well aware that sometimes things, and so now books in my collection are still a little bit hard to let go, but obviously I set certain prices with it, and there's not much negotiation. I mean, so I feel the pain. And so obviously, though, it is good that this does get it funded, because it gets you to the next one and the next one and the next one. And so that's super important. So there's a lot of rewards, and I think there's everything from just the $5 tier. And I don't remember what the original art cover price was going for, but obviously it's a lot more expensive, and you could go pick up just like a $25 or $30 book as well. And then there's CGC options, and then obviously you got a bunch of cool stretch goals as well. So obviously a lot of free digital comics, $15 unlock the magnet. We got another magnet, some stickers, and then obviously as we're climbing up, to 3,500 and 4,500 and 5,500, we're unlocking these, character pins and the original character pins. And so what is that like? Because people really like that stuff too, because it's a little bit different. And also, if you back the other campaigns, you're really building on a nice pin set.
Yeah, for those are just, the last campaign kind of blew all of my expectations out of the water. And my philosophy is always, if I do well, then whoever backed me needs to be feeling satisfied when this comes too. You're not just going to get a book in the mail, because a lot of Kickstarter campaigns I back, you see they make $10,000 and you get the book, and then if you want it signed, you're going to have to pay more for that, and that just feels offensive to me, because you just made $10,000 off of your fans, and you don't give so much as, even a little scrawled on a Post-it note, thanks for your support. So I try to go above and beyond for anybody who would back me. So the last campaign, when it hit 3,500, I thought I need to do something really cool for the people who backed it. And that's when I took Caesar's original sketches for the characters and turned them into a pin. And then I thought, okay, the Ari pin, and that'll close this out. And then it climbed even more, and it hit 4,500. So I have all of the original character sketches for every character in the book. So as long as it keeps going up, I can keep unlocking those. So we had the Ari and Kimberly pins unlocked on the last campaign. This one, I'm hoping to get Father and Kimberly, and then perhaps even Dr. Mann. And then when it's all done, when all 5 characters are unlocked, I'm going to get my artist to create a special backing card that you can put the pins on and kind of display them that way. And that just popped in my head, because you go to Comic-Con and people are ready to knock each other over when they're handing away free pins. So I'm thinking, all right, people love pins, and I've seen it at cons. They go, I don't know anything about your book, but that's a cool pin. I'm just going to buy that pin. They don't want to hear my pitch. They don't want to know anything about the book. They just want to walk away with that little pin that I had sitting on my table. So I think it's something, I know that there's a whole different group of pin collectors. So I basically want to have something that'll appeal to whatever market you might be into collecting.
Yeah, and I think that's very, very important to understand. I also think it's super important to reward your backers for backing you and taking a risk on you. I'm becoming increasingly frustrated when, campaigns don't have good stretch goals. And I know it sounds shallow, but if I'm taking a risk and your book is brand new and it's a coin toss, and you need to entice me at this point. And right now, my money's tight in my world. I'm the first person to admit it. Obviously, I'm handling this, and a lot of money's going into this project. And so I'm very selective with what I back. And there's 10 projects that are all the same, and I have a very hard time figuring out what's good. And I look at track record, and I look at stretch goals, and I'm not looking at stretch goals because I need your tchotchkes. Where I'm looking at what you actually are giving me as a fan and saying thank you to. Somebody had a yo-yo in there, their stretch goal. I'm like, that's really, really smart. I don't need a yo-yo. Cool, but it's the idea that you're even thinking of saying, yeah, we're going to throw you a yo-yo. We're going to throw you a postcard. We're going to throw you a little pin. We're going to throw you a little mini art print. It's like, okay, now you're saying thank you to me. The yo-yo in 2 weeks is going to end up in the trash. In reality, or it's going to end up in my drawer, and then I'll send it off to somebody when I sell a $300 book on eBay. The point that I'm trying to make is that it's though I view it as thank you. I view it as, oh, you appreciate taking a risk and helping me get you across a goal point. So I think it's very, very important that creators do that. And there are people whose projects I won't back anymore because their stretch goals suck. They suck, and they make no qualms about it. And they're making maybe 6-8 grand on 3,500, but your goal freaking sucks. It's like, I find it insulting. So that's how I feel. And I interview a lot of people, so I get a lot of insight on this stuff. And then maybe it's me, and maybe I'm in the minority on that. But I'm looking at more of the intent versus the actual item.
Yeah, because like you said, a yo-yo, you may not use it, but it's unique. I don't have a yo-yo from any Kickstarter campaign, and that's what I try to do. I mean, stickers and magnets are very basic. They're fun. People like stickers and magnets, but there's nothing creative and crazy about them. They're just the kind of basic things, and that's what you get in the lower levels. But I did a LED keychain. People really like that. I had someone come up to me at a con and be like, I still love my keychain, and it's, you can see Immortal Era was practically faded off it, but he still had it on his keyring. I'm like, okay, that's good, because this was, it's just a trinket, and a lot of people probably lost theirs somewhere, But the fact that he still had it was cool. I did things called pop patches, which were iron-ons or stickers. So I said, all right, you want to make, you want to make your mask Immortal Era, you can use these little pop patches. So I try to find something in each campaign that's kind of not just the ordinary. I mean, you get the ordinary too. You get the digital books, you get the stickers, you get the magnets, but I try to find if we go to, the highest level of things, then yeah, I want to make it unique and fun. Cause like you said, I've had people I won't back when I see, this made $10,000, $20,000 and not so much as a thank you. So another thing I do for all of my backers is I write a handwritten thank you note to every single one of them. And seeing as I don't know these people personally, they're not the most deep things. It's more just, thank you so much for taking a chance on my project. What you've done is making this so it can still continue. But I make sure that I buy a box of thank you cards, just go to Hallmark and buy a box that looks cool and make sure that every single backer has a thank you note sitting inside their envelope so they can feel like I actually give a crap about what they did, because every single dollar just, hits you right in the heart, because it's someone's taking a risk on something they've never heard of, a complete unknown commodity. And especially in the beginning, you're taking a chance. This book might be garbage. You might read it and say, I hate everything about it, but they still were willing to take that chance. So I figure it's on me, even if I had 500 backers, to write a personal note to every single one, because if 500 people are willing to take the chance, then I need to spend the time to thank every single one of them.
I think it goes a long way, and which the personal hand notes go a long way. I got a Kickstarter from Sean Barber and Chuck Pino, and Sean did the fulfillment. And he wrote a post-it note, and Sean obviously knew which book I was getting, so he wrote something personal. Yeah. But obviously with that book, I'm sure there were people he didn't know personally, but I'm sure that he wrote a clever note, even if it was just a joke that was in the style of Bilal. I open it up, I'm like, oh man, that's great. I still have the post-it note. It made me laugh. It made me smile. And I shot both Chuck and Sean a message, because they're obviously Facebook friends. Like, oh man, just let me know when you guys want to be back on for another one. I just got your message. And like, oh yeah, no problem. But like, it goes a long way. I think that was the only time I got a personal, note from somebody, and it goes a long way. And I think people forget that buying goodwill isn't hard to buy. It's actually quite easy. If just as an aside, if somebody wants to be on my show, probably should say, hey, I saw the 9th interview you did 2.5 weeks ago. Awesome. Really liked your question. Chances are you're going to get to the front of the line real quick, guys. So 57 minutes in, when I start promoting this, is how you get to the top of my line, everybody, is legitly tell me something that somebody didn't tell me before, or actually put effort into it. And I think that's a big problem right now in the Kickstarter realm. But that's just what I see. And again, I'm not a creator yet. May or may not be. We were speaking before, and I don't want to tip my hat off. If you would like to tell everybody what I might be doing, that's up to you. But yeah, no. But having said all that, so obviously I do want to back out of this though, and I am curious about certain things, because you're in California. And I'm not going to ask you what's happening in 7 days. That's a whole basket, and we're not going to go down that route. But if you're in California, vote. That's all I'm going to say. Vote. It's your civic duty to vote.
Vote whatever you believe. Just don't sit on your butt and complain later.
If you don't want to vote, you have a right to do that too, but you can't complain.
Yep, you can't lose that right.
About the vote, you can complain about 15 other things.
Yeah.
Like if you're going to do a car crash on the same day and you didn't vote, but you got into a car crash, you could totally complain about your car. You have every right to do that. But if you didn't vote, you have no right to complain about the result. So having said that, I am curious though more about Kickstarter and where you think Kickstarter's going, and even increasing shipping prices right now with Kickstarter and all that stuff. Because obviously we have entered that stage in the year in the US where everything's increased by $1. I haven't been hit too hard. I actually just shipped out a book to California. It was only like $10 with $100 shipping on it, which was really nice. It was a comic book, so it wasn't horrific. But it is going to get more expensive as we head into it. I'm in the eBay business. You're obviously shipping out Kickstarters. And so What is that like? Because it always sucks this time of year.
That's, I'd say, one of the most difficult things, because the shipping to ship within the United States is pretty fair, and I can hit that with the $5 I charge above my book price. But international shipping is so unpredictable, and I just took a beating last campaign on international shipping. I mean, I would say I lost a good $100 on shipping international, but I mean, I have international backers who have been here since issue 1, and I'll take a little loss to make sure they get their book because they've been here from the beginning. But Kickstarter, the thing that irritates me most about Kickstarter is that they just say US shipping, how much it's going to be, and then the rest of the world. And the rest of the world is way too vague to put in, because Canada is going to cost a lot less than sending to France. So the fact that they say US and the rest of the world is really putting all the sellers at a disservice, because on any given day the rates can change, and then you have to deal with England. You have to pay those taxes, and they expect you to pay those with the shipping. Well, when I say the rest of the world, I can't just say England and know that, okay, I have to pay, I think it's like the 5% tax on the postage in addition to the standard postage. So it's really tricky, and I wish that Kickstarter would do something about it. Perhaps just putting a shipping calculator where we would put in the dimensions and the weight of each package, and Kickstarter could then calculate the shipping so it's real shipping, and it could say, okay, add $1 or $2 for handling fee because you want to make sure you have it in the right boxes and bubble wrap and everything. But the fact that it's US and the rest of the world, and that's how they do their shipping, it puts sellers at a huge disadvantage.
It's a problem, and I don't ship internationally because I don't want to deal with that problem,
Yeah.
and I refuse to ship. I get requests from like U.S. naval ships all the time, apparently, and I'm like, I have no idea how to do that. Apparently, that's U.S. territory, though. Apparently, I did not know that, and it's super interesting. I could ship into the Pacific Ocean, guys, middle of the Pacific Ocean. It is United States territory if it is a naval ship, and it is super interesting how they deliver that too. But that's a different discussion for a different day, and the reason is because it's the way they deliver it. Is why it's a U.S. postage helicopter. That's the only helicopters the U.S. Post Office has, and they are used specifically for naval ships. It is beyond interesting. It's the coolest thing, and like there's like 3 or 4 documentaries on YouTube. Don't possibly get a little bit inebriated and get trapped down into the hole and watch all of them in one night. But anyway,
went into that rabbit hole.
I learned so much that I did not want to know.
That's crazy. But I had no idea.
It's so interesting. So shipping to a U.S. naval ship is the coolest thing you could ever do because it's so cool tracking your package. But I digress.
I hope someone buys from the U.S. naval ship now.
I next time somebody does, I'm going to be sending out a book, and it's going to be a fantastic experience because I'm just going to have to make sure I pack it the right way, and I'm going to like triple package it.
Yeah.
It's going to be awesome. But anyhow, even going further into that, and I'm curious how you view this because we spoke legitimately 6 months ago, 7 months ago, and obviously COVID was getting better, and now it's getting worse, and obviously things are still somewhat messed up. I personally am sitting out till June at the minimum, just because economically it doesn't make sense for me, and I don't trust anybody, and I want to let the dust settle and see how everything is running with cons before I go and put my time and effort into panels or anything else I want to do at a con. So I'm curious where you're at with conventions and where you think they're going, and even what changes you think they have to be done, because I'm part of the great digitalization pivot.
Yeah. I think really the virtual cons are going to become a lot bigger, because even if cons happen now, they're going to be at extreme reduced capacity, 40 to 50%, and they're going to be having, because I know I'm signed up for LA Comic-Con. Whether it happens or not is anyone's guess, but they're doing it where it will be at 40% capacity, and it will be in shifts. So you'd buy either a morning shift or an afternoon shift. You don't buy it and get the whole day. And they say you'll have plenty of time to see it because with the reduced capacity, you'll be able to go. But that puts a lot of people out who can't get tickets now. So there has to be a way for them to still be able to experience it and for the con itself to still make some money. So my guess is we'll see them selling virtual options. And I have a book that's in review right now to be an LA Comic Con exclusive. So they could say, all right, here's a way you could do the Comic Con exclusives through the mail. Like you can order them through our website. So it's not, you can't only get it at the con, you can start ordering those things on the websites and stuff like that. So they have to kind of evolve because who knows what variant's going to come around the corner next. You know, every time we think we're out of the woods, there's another variant that's coming, and we could find a variant that is stronger than the vaccines. So I think the cons need to find a way to do it where if they're doing it at reduced capacity, they have to find a way to still get the sellers to make their table fees back. And that would be offering a way to sell our stuff online. So those who aren't in attendance, here's a web store for all of the vendors that you can buy directly through it. And maybe that they even do the shipping where they say, okay, we need 20 copies of issue 1 and 30 of issue 2, and we're going to mail them all out so that you can have it kind of moving in both directions. Because selling at 40% puts all of the vendors at a disadvantage because you're going to have a lot less foot traffic coming your way. But being in that room, you don't want it at 100% capacity. I've seen it. It's complete madness in LA. And they have to find a way to kind of make both ways work. So I know masking up and lower capacity and then an hour between the two shifts to do cleaning and sanitizing. So we'll see. I mean, it's definitely going to be a different world working.
So I mean, I'm part of the great digitalization pivot where I don't know if I'm ever going to go back to a con. And the reason why I say this is I had a bad experience at last convention that I went to. And on top of the fact that COVID hit and that I have a much larger presence online, I've obviously figured out how to network online. And I've done things legitly from my house, doing actually things that carry a lot more merit than I've ever done at a con. And I've gotten more thank yous out of doing this. And I don't see, and also I'm in complete control of my company. And I have complete ownership. I'm not on somebody else's dime. Nobody can cut me off. Nobody can yell at me. Nobody can withhold money if I was ever to get paid. So then like I did something. And on top of that, obviously I have a sponsor now for the first time. And so for me, I'm saying to myself, I think I get what cons are not going to ever become obsolete. But if you're a business, I want to go directly to you. I don't want to have to do an interview at a con, you selling at a table. I'd rather do a live show, or I'd rather buy directly from you and sell on my eBay store or open up. Now that I'm building out an audience, well, I got 4,000 people like on my Facebook page. You know, I can sell stuff. I can do a live show. I have so much control online that it's not even funny anymore how much control I have. And legitimately, my control went from 0.03% to legitimately 90%.
Wow.
In the last 20 months. And growth has been phenomenal as well. So I get why it's important, but if you could send your books to CGC and you could sell those books yourself, and now there's no middleman, and now if you're doing 10 cons and it's $2,500, and you could take the 2,500 and send more books to CGC and then do a little marketing and then actually sell through and make 7,500 versus making 3,600. I mean, that's how I view it, but that's just my opinion. And maybe it's because I've never produced a comic, and maybe I don't want to meet my fans physically because they're legitimately from all over the world. And I have a global audience, and I don't think my fans want to meet me in particularly at a con either. So maybe I'm from a different world than the traditional comic sense. So maybe that's it. And I'm the first person to admit that. But again, you know, I haven't produced a comic, so I've never had that experience. I've had it from a fan side, but I can get whatever I want now online, and I can do it all virtual, and I don't have to waste my time, and I can actually manage other things. So that's how I view it.
Yeah, and I think For me, I do like to get out there and meet the people who are reading the book and be able to pitch to them directly. So there's a power in that, but losing the cons kind of forced me to rethink my entire model and decide. And I realized at that point I had to create an online presence. So I think it helped me evolve as a creator, knowing that your simple way of standing in a room and talking to people is gone, but when you're talking to people, you're pretty much talking to people from whatever place you're in. You don't get the worldwide market that you can get online. So that's something I've been working on, where you have that much more established. I'm trying to work on that digital presence because that's always been something I was a lot weaker at.
Oh, I'm not good at it either, but I just hustle, and
Yeah.
it's my generation, and I'm figuring out a lot of stuff, and I had a slight head start, but everybody's starting at ground zero because it is beyond complicated on that front. But that's all a whole nother podcast for a whole nother day. And then there's legitimately people who specialize in this who can help everybody in this segment. And some of them are beginning to be good at this. You know, obviously inked marketing, and I like Kevin. He's good at it. But even he, and this isn't a diss at Kevin, there are people who legitimately work for Fortune 500 companies who this is what their job is, and they legitimately make millions upon millions of dollars making sure that happens. Gary Vee works with Fortune 500 companies with pretty much this, with top companies like Pepsi and other companies. I don't know if he works for Pepsi, but I think the point is made. So obviously, having said all that, I don't want to press you too much, but I do want to give you an opportunity to self-promote yourself because you got a lot going on. Obviously, you got the Kickstarter going on. Hopefully, fingers crossed, LA Comic-Con is going to go smoothly and you're going to be there because while I'm anti-con right now, I don't want them to fail. And if you can make money at cons, I am more than happy, and I wish success. And anything else that's going on. And obviously, where can people find you? Where can people back the Kickstarter? Where can people check stuff out? Because obviously, you got to support indie comics.
Yeah, right now, the best place to buy the book is through the Kickstarter. It's under Immortal Era 1 through 5. So that's your best way to get it. I do have a web store on my website, finishlinecomics.com, but that only goes up to issue 3 right now because I don't want to sell copies of issue 4 until I know how many I need after the Kickstarter.
He doesn't want to undercut himself. That's what it's about.
Yeah, I just don't want to. I don't want to have to stick the people with second prints. You can get digital copies of all those there, and then on top of that, I under Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all under Finish Line Comics. So that's the place to find me there. And right now, if you follow any of those, you're going to get a lot of information on Kickstarter. If you go to my website, you can sign up for the mailing list, and I do like to send sneak peeks out to people on the mailing list of when a new cover's out. They see it before anybody else, so I send it out to them, and then a couple days later, I'll put it onto Instagram and onto Facebook. So if you're on the mailing list, if you sign up for that on my website, you get a chance to see things a little bit early. And yeah, right now, all my brain is on the Kickstarter and trying to make this one a success as well. And then constant think about what am I going to do if it goes above this? What more can I give people? So I'm already working with the company on the first pin, just kind of crossing my fingers and hoping we hit that mark. But we're starting on pin number 1, and that'll be the father pin. And then we'll go from there. Because I told him, I said, I'm not giving you all the orders at once because I can't be that presumptuous. But let's start with 1, and come what may, I'll have 1 cool pin. So I'm hopefully gonna, keep branching out, and then next year try to launch a new title. But we'll worry about that when we get through the first 6 issues of Immortal Era.
And then obviously there's a lot more stuff going out there. So what I've been saying is you have to support indie. And what that means is you have to back Kickstarters, whether you're backing a digital tier, a physical tier, you're just picking up, issue 5, or you're picking up, the entire set or an entire digital set. Every dollar counts, and every dollar helps to get a project closer to its finish line. And it is very important because no amount is too small. And so I think that is something very important where, people say, oh, $5, it's not going to make a difference. $5 can make a huge difference. 100 people donate and pledge $5, it's $500, and you're going to read it and you're going to enjoy it. It's going to be delivered to you. Also, if you're international, digital is extremely helpful. And then even beyond that, obviously sharing, liking it, because again, you never know who's watching it, who's seeing it. Somebody could say, man, this is awesome. And man, I didn't see it, because algorithms are very, very tricky. So it is very important to share things. If you back it, you should be sharing that you backed it. You should be tweeting about it. Obviously, liking on Instagram, that helps. And also, it's just feedback in general. And obviously, I'm part of Indie as well. I have Buy Me a Coffee. This is still, while I have a sponsor, this is very much a fan-supported show. I may or may not have something coming out in November. Obviously, I don't want to tip my hat too much, but I'm definitely leaning towards it, and it's going to be very, very interesting. I got some interesting ideas about what's going to happen with that and what we're going to do and how we're going to make it work. I just need to figure out the finances slightly on it and actually plan ahead a little bit, but I think it's going to be very, very interesting in that regard. But yeah, seriously though, I am a fan-supported show, so Buy Me a Coffee. It's very similar to Patreon. So if you're watching at this point, you like what I do, you can check that out. But more importantly than that, I really appreciate likes, shares, and things of that nature, because I want more people to see this. And every time this is shared, it helps me, it helps Ed, and it gets eyes on this project more, and it does make a big difference. And you might say, oh, it's only a share, but what if you share it to somebody who then goes buys every single thing on the Kickstarter? Well, that's a big share, and you never know who's watching. On that note, I am going to give you the final word.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me. Hope that you guys are interested in the series. It's a big story. It's going to take a while to get there, but I hope in the end it's fulfilling. And we're on issue 5, about to close out this first arc with issue 6. So I'm already thinking ahead well beyond this. So I'm glad I didn't get too spoilery, because sometimes people get me talking and I'll give away stuff that shouldn't be given away. So I'm just excited to share this story. So I hope you guys will head to my Kickstarter and just give it a look. Because like you said, every dollar, if you want to just throw a dollar in and say, here, good luck, every dollar is, like I said, straight to the heart. It makes me feel greater than anything that people are willing to support this crazy dream I had.
Well, obviously, I agree. And, it does make a big difference every dollar. And I don't think I could have said it any better myself. So that is a wrap.